Ancient Greek athletes had no gyms. Here's the problem with that sentence. The word gym is Greek. The Greeks didn't just lack a gym, they invented the concept and named it. So let's fix the premise before we get into the good part. They had gyms. They just didn't look anything like the place you swipe a membership card into. No machines, no mirrors, no air conditioning, no music, just sand, olive oil, naked men, and a training philosophy so effective that modern sports science is still circling back to pieces of it 25 centuries later. And the better bodies than yours part isn't just a clickbait flex. It's defensible for a very specific reason we'll get to. Stick around. The word gymnasium comes directly from the Greek gymnos, naked, because that's literally how Greek men trained and competed. Nude, oiled up, and dusted with sand for grip. At the end of the session, they scraped the oil and sweat off with a curved tool called a strigil instead of showering with soap. A proper gymnasium wasn't a single room. It was closer to a campus, a sand-floored wrestling yard called the palestra, an open-air running track, sometimes a covered track for bad weather, changing rooms, baths, and, just as importantly, lecture halls. Philosophers taught there. Aristotle's Lyceum was a gymnasium. The place where Athenian men built their bodies was the same place they argued about ethics and listened to poetry. Physical training wasn't separated from intellectual life. It was the same afternoon. There was no equipment in the modern sense because there was no need for it. The equipment was the sand pit, your own body weight, a training partner, and whatever object a coach handed you that day. Here's the biggest structural difference between then and now, and it's the one that actually matters for your training. A modern lifter walks into a gym and trains a body part. Chest day, leg day, isolating one muscle at a time with a machine that locks the movement into a single plane. Ancient Greek training had almost no concept of this. The pentathlon, running, long jump, discus, javelin, and wrestling, all in one competition, wasn't an event for specialists. It was treated as the truest test of an all-around athlete, and the training behind it reflected that explosive power for the jump and throws, technical grappling strength for wrestling, raw aerobic capacity for the run, all developed simultaneously because the sport demanded all of it at once. This is also where the famous Greek physique, the one carved into the discobolus, the choroi, every marble torso you've ever seen in a museum, actually came from. Nobody was training to look like that statue. The statue is what multi-skill, full-body, integrated athletic training looks like on a human body. The aesthetic was the side effect. The pentathlon was the cause. Greek athletes did have one genuine piece of training equipment: halteres, handheld weights used by long jumpers. An athlete would swing them forward on the approach and release them mid-flight, using the momentum to add distance and stabilize the landing. For a long time, this looked like ornamental nonsense, until biomechanics researchers actually tested it. Using reconstructed halteres in controlled jump trials, scientists found the weights genuinely increase takeoff speed and alter flight mechanics in a measurable, physically consistent way. This wasn't superstition. Ancient coaches had empirically tuned the size and weight of the halteres. Most surviving examples cluster in a narrow, optimal range, through nothing but generations of trial and error on the sandpit. It's a real piece of sports equipment that happens to be 2,500 years old, and it still checks out under a force plate. This is the part most people have never heard, and it's the strongest evidence that Greek training wasn't just instinctive grinding. The Roman-era writer Philostratus documented a structured 4-day training cycle used by serious athletes, called the tetrad. Day 1 prepared the body. Day 2 was an all-out, maximum effort trial. Day 3 was deliberate, lighter recovery. Day 4 was a moderate session, often focused on a specific skill. Strip away the Greek terminology, and you're looking at the basic skeleton of every modern periodized strength program. A hard day, a light day, a recovery day, and a moderate day, cycling in a deliberate rhythm, instead of just training maximally every single session until you break down. Even Philostratus noted that this method had critics in his own time. There was genuine debate in antiquity over the best training split, which is a very familiar argument if you've ever opened a fitness forum. Now for the honest caveat, because this series doesn't get to skip it twice in a row. You've probably heard the legend of Milo of Croton, the 6-time Olympic wrestling champion who supposedly carried a newborn calf on his shoulders every day for 4 years until it grew into a full bull. The original story of progressive overload. It's a great story. It's also not what ancient sources actually say. Writers like Pausanias and Athenaeus told the Milo legend as spectacle and excess. A man strong enough to carry a grown bull around a stadium and then eat the whole thing in one sitting. Not as a documented training method anyone was meant to replicate. The specific framing of daily calf carrying equals progressive overload doesn't show up until the 1920s in promotional material from an American barbell company building itself an ancient pedigree. That doesn't mean ancient Greek athletes didn't understand training progression. They clearly did, given the existence of the tetrad. It means the most quoted ancient proof of modern training science is actually modern marketing wearing a toga. Training wasn't the only thing that evolved. The earliest recorded Olympic diet was almost entirely plant-based. Dried figs, fresh cheese, and barley bread. Charmes of Sparta reportedly won the Olympic sprint in 668 BC, fueled mainly on dried figs. For generations, that simple regimen was considered the gold standard for serious athletes. Then, somewhere around the 5th century BC, meat took over, credited either to the long-distance runner Dromius of Stymphalus or to a trainer named Pythagoras advising the boxer Eurymenes of Samos, not the famous vegetarian philosopher of the same name, to everyone's confusion ever since. From that point on, heavy meat consumption became standard for serious competitors. Here's the part that should make you laugh. Greek trainers didn't pick meat at random. They matched the animal to the event through a kind of sympathetic magic. Goat meat for jumpers, hoping some of the animal's natural spring would transfer. Beef for discus and javelin throwers, chasing the strength of an ox. Rooster meat, specifically from birds that had survived a cockfight, fed to wrestlers for obvious reasons. The science behind the logic was nonsense, but the underlying instinct that different events might call for different fueling strategies is one modern sports nutrition takes completely seriously, just with blood panels instead of folklore. Here's the honest answer to the title. By raw performance numbers. No, a modern elite long jumper or wrestler would demolish the ancient records, because today's athletes have better nutrition science, global talent pools, sports medicine, and recovery tools that the ancient world simply didn't have access to. But compare the ancient model to how the average person trains today, and the claim holds up uncomfortably well. Most gym goers train isolated muscles on machines that lock a joint into one plane of motion, chase a look rather than a capability, and skip the structured hard/light/recovery cycling that even Philostratus considered basic. The Greek system, full-body, multi-skill, periodized, built around what the body could actually do rather than how one muscle looked in a mirror, produces more complete, transferable athleticism almost by accident. The statue-worthy physique wasn't the goal. It was proof that the training underneath it was sound. So next time someone says the ancient Greeks had no gyms, you can tell them they invented the word, built campuses around sand pits and philosophy lectures, biomechanically engineered the first dumbbells, and documented a training cycle that still maps onto your program today. They just also got saddled with a calf and bull legend that a barbell company invented 2,000 years later. If you want more ancient training systems checked against real biomechanics and real sources instead of gym bro folklore, subscribe. Because almost every one of these stories has a real version, and it's usually more interesting than the myth.